step into the inspiring world of Craig Cunningham, an extraordinary athlete who defied every obstacle life threw his way. From humble beginnings in Trail, British Columbia, to the heartbreak of losing his father at a young age, and ultimately to an NHL dream. Realized, Craig's story embodies resilience, grit, and an unwavering passion for hockey. In this video, we'll explore his harrowing battle against acute cardiac arrest, the life-changing amputation of his leg, and his triumphant return to the ice. Prepare to be moved by a tale that proves no dream is too big when backed by an unbreakable spirit. Craig Cunningham's journey reads like the script of an underdog sports film that refuses to end in tragedy. Except his story is all too real, charged with resilience, heartbreak, triumph, and the unbreakable spirit he carries. Imagine a small boy growing up in the modest town of Trail, British Columbia, shoulders slightly hunched against the cold, dreaming of the roaring crowds in the National Hockey League. He's got that wild glint in his eye, the kind of hope only children seem to have in limitless supply, and a sense of commitment he's learned from his mom, Heather, who's raising 3 boys on her own after the tragic loss of her husband. Craig is barely old enough to understand everything that's happening around him, losing his dad, watching his mother work tirelessly day after day. But he knows deep down that the only place he feels truly free is on the rink. There, with a stick in his hands and the icy air against his face, he's not the kid whose father died. He's just another whirlwind of energy chasing a puck, fueling a dream too big to leave behind. If you had met Craig as a kid, you might have noticed that whenever he'd stumble, he'd pop right back up, a little bruise on his knee or a scrape on his elbow, but determined as ever. That trait, call it stubbornness, call it grit, would become the very core of who he'd be as an athlete and as a man. Hockey for Craig was more than just a pastime. It was an escape from moments he'd rather not relive, a sanctuary where the walls were tall enough to hide his grief. Losing a father at such a young age, especially in a place like Trail where everyone seems to know each other's histories, could feel like an ever-present spotlight shining on his tragedy. But when he laced up those skates and glided onto the ice, he disappeared into the rush of it all. If you peeked through the boards while a younger Craig was out there, you would see something extraordinary, a child so consumed by the love for hockey that he forgot everything else. He forgot that the real world was out there waiting with its unpredictable crises. He forgot that his mother was struggling to keep the household afloat. He forgot that he sometimes felt different from the other kids whose fathers came to games. All that mattered was the next pass, the next shot, and the next chance to prove he was meant to be out there. He made a promise early on, a simple one, but a promise that would define the entire arc of his life. He told his mom he'd play in the National Hockey League one day. Picture a tiny living room in Trail with furniture that's seen better days, maybe the faint aroma of something simmering in the kitchen. Nothing fancy, but warm with familial love. Craig looks at his mother and says, "I'm going to make it to the NHL." And she, exhausted from working multiple jobs, perhaps dealing with grief she can't fully express, smiles gently because deep down, she believes him. There's something about Craig's determination that can make cynics think twice. The road ahead is long, the competition fierce, and the odds stacked high. But sometimes you encounter people who have that intangible it, and Craig had it. When he began his professional climb, it was with the Boston Bruins, an iconic organization known for its passion, toughness, and high expectations. So, imagine Craig, still carrying that trailborne grit, stepping into this larger-than-life franchise. He absorbs the buzzing energy of the locker room, the intensity of the fans, the realization that, yes, he's here, he's really here. For the boy from a small Canadian town, this first NHL step is massive. Yet for all his wide-eyed wonder, Craig is not one to simply stand in awe. He's there to make his mark. Though his time in Boston is meaningful, it's only a piece of the puzzle. Eventually, the road leads him to the Arizona Coyotes AHL affiliate in Tucson, where he truly comes into his own as a leader. Teammates and coaches alike see that he's the kind of captain who lifts everyone around him, offering guidance one day and executing an all-out hustle play the next. He's known for a relentless pursuit of victory, that refusal to quit until the final horn blasts. It's the exact brand of intensity you'd expect from a guy who's invested his entire life into this dream. He wore the C with pride, not because it was a flashy letter on his jersey, but because it signified the trust and respect he'd earned from those around him. But the real turning point, the moment that sent shockwaves through the hockey world, came on November 19th, 2016. It was supposed to be a routine game for the Tucson Roadrunners in Arizona. The players warmed up, the fans found their seats. The anticipation in the arena was electric yet familiar. Craig was there on the ice, part of that swirl of jerseys and sticks, fully prepared to do what he loved most. Then, out of nowhere, he collapsed. It was like reality twisted for a moment. This unstoppable athlete, this dependable leader, was suddenly on the ice, motionless. Panic engulfed the arena. Imagine yourself as a fan in the stands, hearing the collective gasp, watching medics rush out with a stretcher, your own heart pounding in your ears. Now picture Heather, Craig's mother, sitting in that crowd. She hears someone nearby shout that the player on the ice is her son, that he's having seizures. Her mind tries to process the unthinkable scene playing out before her. Then she notices something utterly horrifying. Craig's arm is dangling behind him on the stretcher, and she's desperate to understand what is happening, but the chaos is overwhelming. Firefighters and paramedics try to do their jobs with calm efficiency, but the news spreads quickly. They think Craig isn't alive. In that split second, time itself seems to freeze. He'd gone into acute cardiac arrest, his heart simply stopping, as though someone pressed a cosmic pause button. All the hustle and dreams and resilience had led to this moment where everything hung in the balance. There's no dressing it up. Those minutes on the ice were pure horror for anyone who loved Craig, who admired him, who understood what he represented. If you listen to people who were there, they'll say the sense of helplessness was overwhelming. But as medics whisked him away to Banner University Medical Center, a faint glimmer of hope flickered. Enter Dr. Zane Colby, a cardiothoracic surgeon whose name is whispered with reverence for good reason. Dr. Colby proposed an extraordinarily rare procedure to relieve the pressure on Craig's heart, giving that most crucial muscle a chance to recover. It was only the third time in the history of medicine that this procedure would be attempted. In that moment, faced with unimaginable stakes, you can't help but wonder, how does one find such resolve to push for a medical Hail Mary? Over the next 2 days, as Craig lay there, his life tethered to all manner of medical machines, the miracle began to reveal itself. His heart started to beat again. 2 days. That was all it took for the first signs of life to reemerge. And 5 days in, the doctors started seeing genuine signs of recovery. It was as if the unstoppable determination that had guided him on the ice was surging within his very cells. Everyone from the skilled medical team to the concerned hockey community to his anxious family watched in astonishment. Craig Cunningham was alive. It wasn't a neat, quick fix. He was still critically vulnerable, but a spark of hope had been lit. Often you'll hear athletes compared to warriors. In Craig's case, lying in that bed, fighting for every breath, that title seemed more apt than ever. He was waging a war not against another team, but against the fragility of the human body when catastrophe strikes. As the days stretched on, another challenge arose. The victory of surviving cardiac arrest was overshadowed by a sudden, relentless infection in his leg. With his heart not yet at full strength, his body struggled to fight off the invasion. The doctors faced a devastating decision. To save Craig's life, they would need to amputate. Can you picture that conversation? A once prolific athlete, an aspiring champion, being told that to keep living, he'd have to lose a part of himself that was crucial, not just to his career, but to how he saw himself in the world. Ultimately, though, it was Craig's decision. He listened to the doctor's advice, weighed the risks, and with the same fortitude he'd shown on the ice, he agreed. In that moment, it wasn't about glory or statistics or the future of his hockey career. It was about living. Imagine waking up from surgery, the ache of the amputation burning through whatever pain meds they'd given him, and thinking to yourself, what now? For a hockey player, your legs are your lifeline. They power each stride. They let you chase down pucks. They define how you move on the ice. To lose one is to lose a piece of your identity. Yet Craig wasn't ready to let that define him. This might have been one of the darkest chapters of his life, but it wasn't the final chapter. Once Craig was stable enough to start imagining the future again, he dared to think about returning to the rink. Maybe not in the capacity of an NHL player. Those days were likely gone, but simply to feel the ice beneath him. Could he do it on a prosthetic, Would he be able to balance, to move, to recapture even a slice of what he once felt out there? The first time he tried to skate again, it was beyond awkward. Craig was no stranger to stepping onto the ice, but this time he felt like a kid all over again, wobbly and uncertain. The raw frustration of watching himself go from a pro-level athlete to someone barely able to glide without faltering was soul-crushing. If you could see his face behind the mask that day, you'd see the flicker of disappointment, but you'd also see the seeds of that old determination sparked to life again. Because if there's one constant about Craig, it's that he doesn't quit. He doesn't dwell on what could have been. He focuses on what can still be. The second time he put on skates post-amputation, something extraordinary happened. A sense of ease, or at least a fragment of it, returned. Suddenly he was actually skating. Not like before, sure, but it was enough for those watching to gasp in disbelief. There was a moment of collective epiphany. This man was unstoppable in a way we rarely witness. It wasn't about professional hockey anymore. It was about the human spirit's capacity to endure. That day, as he glided across the ice, you can bet Craig felt the weight of his personal tragedy lessen just a little. Because for him, skating wasn't simply a pastime. It was therapy, catharsis, a direct line to the kid who first dreamed big in Trail, British Columbia. He'd never returned to the NHL as a player. His body wouldn't permit it. But that didn't mean he had to sever ties with the game he loved. The Arizona Coyotes saw something special in Craig, something that transcended physical ability. They signed him to a 2-year contract as a pro scout. Let that sink in for a second. Just a short while after nearly dying on the ice and undergoing a major amputation, he's back in the professional hockey fold, playing a crucial role in shaping the future of a franchise. You can't teach that kind of spirit. And it didn't end there. In partnership with Dr. Colby, Craig embarked on a mission to revolutionize cardiac screening for hockey players. The plan was to start with the Coyotes in August 2017 and hopefully expand throughout the entire professional hockey world. Because if his story taught us anything, it's that sudden cardiac arrest can strike even the young and athletic. Craig transformed his near-death experience into a catalyst for change, urging the sports community to put robust screening measures in place. He wasn't out to make headlines this time. He was out to save lives, and in doing so, he added another layer to his legacy.